So far in this course, I've covered a number of instruments commonly found in a standard band or orchestra score: snare drum, keyboard percussion, and timpani. This next set of lessons will cover another group of percussion instruments commonly referred to as concert percussion accessories or accessory instruments. There are thousands of accessory instruments that percussionists are expected to know how to play. Covering all of those instruments would take a lifetime's worth of study. So, in this course, I plan to detail 6 of the most common accessory instruments that you will encounter as a school music teacher, and briefly touch on a few dozen other instruments. We will start with the tambourine and triangle, then move to the bass drum, hand cymbals, suspended cymbal, and tam-tam, before racing through a litany of other instruments in the final video. So, why are percussionists asked to play all of these instruments? What makes an instrument a percussion instrument? Some will define percussion instruments as instruments that produce sound by striking, shaking, or scraping. Now, I think that's a good way to begin to think about concert percussion accessories, but I don't think it encompasses all of the instruments that percussionists are expected to play regularly. Where does a whistle fall into that equation? Or what happens when we bow a vibraphone? Does that mean the vibraphone is no longer a percussion instrument just because we're not hitting it? Or why, when a composer wants the sound of a box of nails hitting the floor, do they ask the percussionist to make it happen? I'm not sure about the answers to these questions, but what I do know is that the percussionists will be the ones expected to do all of these things when they come along in a piece of music. For me, a percussion instrument is anything that no other musician is trained to play. This could be something that is struck, shaken, or scraped, but it also might not. This is really one of the joys of being a percussionist. There's always something new that we get to create music with, and there will never be a time when there are not new sounds and techniques waiting to be discovered and used to make the world a little more beautiful. Encourage this sense of discovery and creativity in your percussionists. I think we would all be a little better off if we exercised our creativity more often. All that being said, it can be useful to group percussion instruments together by how they typically create sound. This allows us to use the transfer of learning that we've talked about a few times already in this course. If we understand how the round membrane of a snare drum creates sound, then we can use the same principles to approach an instrument that also has a round membrane, but maybe is something we've never even heard of before. Our first category of instrument classifications includes instruments where sound is created through the vibration of a membrane that's stretched over a resonating chamber. These instruments are known as membranophones. As you can probably guess, some of the most common membranophones in the band or orchestra are the snare drum and the timpani. Most other drums like concert toms, bass drums, and hand drums are included in this category as well. Whether you strike a membranophone with an implement or your hand, the way that it produces sound does not change. The vibration of the head moves air, creating sound waves. The next group of instruments produce sound by vibrating in their entirety. These instruments are called idiophones. Many concert percussion accessory instruments are idiophones. Woodblocks, cymbals, cowbells, and shakers are included here. We could also categorize keyboard percussion instruments as groups of idiophones arranged in sets. Each bar of a keyboard percussion instrument vibrates in its entirety to produce a sound, thus falling within the definition of an idiophone. One instrument that falls between the membranophone and the idiophone categories is the concert tambourine. To play the tambourine, its head is struck, creating an attack like a membranophone, but also the jingles resonate in their entirety to create sound. Depending on the ratio of head sound to jingle sound, the tambourine could fall into either of our first two categories. Third, we have the aerophones. Aerophones produce sound through a vibrating air column. Percussion instruments included in this family are all types of whistles, bird calls, vacuum tubes, and sirens. The pipe organ would also fall into this category. Fourth, we have chordophones. These instruments produce sound by the activation of a string or chord. The piano is the most common instrument here. Pressing down a key on the piano engages a hammer that strikes a string. The hammer dulcimer, cymbalum, and berimbau are other chordophones that appear less commonly in Western music. Lastly, we have electronic instruments, which produce sound through an electronic means. These instruments are continually becoming cheaper and more ubiquitous in school music programs. The versatility offered through these electronic percussion instruments is convenient and can be cost-effective. The Pearl Corporation, Mallet Cat, and Wernick Musical Instruments are a few companies that make various iterations of an electronic keyboard percussion instrument. Through the use of sampled sounds, these instruments can substitute for a multitude of instruments or sound effects in concert band, marching band, orchestra, or percussion ensemble. Nowadays, many students even have phones or tablets that can be used as samplers or drum pads. This is a great way to incorporate the use of technology into your music program while also encouraging creativity in your students. Remember, I wanted to go through these categories of percussion instruments so that you have a framework through which to view the multitude of new instruments that I will discuss in the upcoming videos. Think about how each instrument creates sound and see if you can apply previously learned knowledge to improve your performance. This is the quickest way that you will be able to learn and retain the knowledge required to teach all of these instruments.